For the next part of the project, we're going to look at creating some very basic blueprints. One for a material or multiple materials, and one for an actual light, which we can use to lighten up the interior of our building that we created in the last video. Now, I'm going to start off, like I said, by making a material. So, could I get you to go to your content folder here, and we're going to make a new folder for any of our customized materials. So, I'm going to right click, new folder, and I'm going to call it my materials. Once that folder is created, just double click to enter. Now, what I'm going to do here is simply create a new material. So I'm going to click on this add and import, and you'll see there's an option for materials right here. Just click that. I'm going to call this, we're just going to go for a nice flat color for now, which I'm going to use for my walls. It'll just be a grey, so we'll just say simple grey. This is going to be my first material. Once that's created, you can just double click it to enter this material. Now what you can see here is basically a very basic event graph, I suppose, with this sitting in the very middle. Now this is called a node, and in Unreal there's lots and lots of different nodes available to you, thousands, tens of thousands. You're not going to ever understand all of these nodes, and you're not going to ever need to actually go through and try to understand all these nodes. You'll only really ever use the ones that you need at the time. You will become familiar with certain ones, but again, there'll be lots that you never really ever use. So this first one we're looking at here, this is basically what controls our material that we've just created. Now you can make very complex materials using different textures, but in this case we're just going to make a very simple color. And to do that we need to attach them to this base color here, this base color pin here. So what I'd like you to do is just hold the 3 key and just click to the left here, and that creates this 3 constant. You can also right click and type in 3. There you are, constant 3 vector. That'll do the same thing. Now this is basically a color node. So if you double click this black box, you'll be able to create a color. Now if you're going to go for something nicer like a green, a blue, red, remember always that you're going to have to pull this darkness value all the way up, because it starts on the dark end of things, so whatever you do, it won't change the color. But as I pulled that up, you can see that the color actually changes there. And now I said I wanted to just go for a nice grey texture, so I'm going to go for something simple like that. So I'm just going to click OK. So that's the color that I'd like. Now to simply apply this to my material, we just pull a strand from this pin and plug it into the base color. And now you can see that my material, or my color in this case, has been applied to the sample shape on the left here. I'm going to make that a little bit darker because I don't think that's going to be much different from the color that I currently got on there. So I'm going to make let's say, there we are, that's noticeably different, I suppose. So we're going to go with this dark grey here. I'm going to click save, and I can close that down. So the same way that we applied materials in the last video, I'm just going to click on one of these objects, and I'm going to change text down here to simple grey, and hopefully that's enough of a difference. There you go, that's very dark, but that'll do. So I'm actually going to go around, highlight all of these, and I'm going to change them to this simple, if I can spell simple correctly, simple grey texture. There you go, so all of these are now this simple grey. If I go inside, you can see I've made a little ramp that goes up onto the roof. So I'd like the roof and the ramp to be a different color. So I'm going to do what I've just done again. I'm going to go into here, I'm going to click add and import, and I'm going to create a new material. So let's make this a bit of a, should we say a dark orange. So I'll say simple dark orange. Now obviously I'm simply just naming something, naming the material something appropriate here. That's not going to actually affect anything I do inside. So here we are again, new node here. I hold down 3 and I click. And let's have a look for what color I want. So it's dark orange. So it turns out making a dark orange is actually harder than I thought, so I'm going to settle with that. Just connect that to the base color there. It's not really a dark orange, it's more of an actual orange. I don't know what will happen if I make it on here. There you go, we'll say dark orange. It turns out dark orange is actually brown. So there we go, save that, and I'm going to close this down. And same thing again, I'm going to click these 2 here, change it to that orangey brown color, and I'm going to do the same for these here. In fact, let's get rid of this stretch texture here, and we're going to make that into a dark orange too. It sort of actually suits the props that I've put in here. So before moving on, could you just make sure that you're comfortable creating these very simple color textures and apply them to your objects, please. Now moving on, we're actually going to do something about the lighting in here. So right now in the editor it's actually not too bad, you can go and you can still see things properly. But let's change the lighting a little bit so we can better understand what it's going to look like. So the type of world that we started allows us to actually move the sun up there. Now it might take you a couple of minutes to get the hang of this, but if you hold Control and L at the same time, I'd recommend using your right hand side control, and move the mouse down, you can actually pull the sun down to create a much darker environment. So I pulled that down to a very late sunset. Now if I go inside now, suddenly things do become a little bit darker. You can see the difference there. Now I'm going to pull that back up so we can see everything just until I do fix this. If we were going into a room and it was too dark in real life, we'd simply turn the light on. So what I'd like us to do is to create a blueprint for a light. Now if you look up here, and you might have already done this, you can see that there is a light in here. So I can pull this into the world, and there we go, we've got a light. Easy. Now while you can do that, what we're actually going to do is create a blueprint, because it'll save us a lot of time in the long run, and I'll explain why when we start doing it. So back to our content folder, and I'd like us to create a new folder again, and we're going to call this My Blueprints. Again, once you've created that folder, could you just double click it and enter, please? Okay. We're going to click Add and Import, and we're going to click on Blueprint Class. Now once you do this, you're going to get a list of different kinds of blueprints that we can make. All of these have their own purpose, and all of them have different uses. Right now we're just going to use a simple actor, because we're not going to ever be able to control this light in terms of possession. We're just simply going to have it exist in the world. So I'm going to click actor, and I'm going to call it simple light. Once that's created, I'm going to double click it to enter, and we end up in this viewport. We end up in this very simple, or well, very empty grey world. Now this is important to understand, because you're going to spend a lot of time in here actually programming different things. So we're going to start off with the left hand side. Now at the very top left here, you've got your components. This is basically what your blueprint consists of. It's all the objects that will be in there. So any static meshes, which are basically 3D models, will go in here. Any collision boxes, any lights, anything that you add to this blueprint will appear in this list, and we can manipulate them from up there, or we can edit them from up there. Now when you click on something in this components list, like this root here, it'll bring up the details on the right hand side. So you'll see it pop up very obviously on the right there. Whatever object or whatever entity we put in that list will have a different set of details or properties depending on what they are. So if I say look at the details or something, I mean look at the right hand side when you've highlighted something there. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to click this green add component button up here, and I'm going to add a static mesh, which is down in this list here. Now, like I said before, a static mesh is basically just a it's an object, it's a 3D object, it's a piece of geometry that exists. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to call it light base. So this is going to go on the ceiling, and it's basically going to just sit there ready to hold a light. Just because I've created this doesn't actually mean that anything is there. So nothing actually exists in terms of this object. Until when you've highlighted it and you look at the details, in this static mesh area here, we can add a 3D model to it. So I'm going to click on the drop down, and I'm just going to type in cylinder. And I'm going to click on this shape cylinder. And that adds a cylinder into my editor. Now I'm going to build this with the light sitting upside down, and I'll change it when we actually go into the world. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. That's about right. And then I'm going to decrease the size of it here. So that's going to be the base. My light's going to sit on top of that. I think in this case I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I'm going to use my dark orange texture from earlier. So that's the base. That's what's going to sit on the ceiling. Now I'm going to add another light, or in this case, sorry, another static mesh, and this is actually going to be the light bulb. Again, I'm going to add a cylinder as its static mesh, and then I've got to make this a little bit smaller. Again, there, and I'm going to set it inside of that base. Can you see that from underneath? Okay, so there's a little bit of clipping going on here, so I'm going to increase the height a little bit, just so that doesn't happen. Now you could also use a sphere for this to make it a little bit more bulb shaped if you'd like to. That's up to you. Now, this doesn't look very fancy, and it doesn't look much like a light at all. So for now, I'm going to just quickly compile and save this using the compile and save buttons at the top, and I'm actually going to create a new material for this light. So I'm going to go back into my materials folder, and I'm going to create a new material, and I'm going to call this yellow glow. I'm going to open it up, and this time I'm going to make a slightly more complex material. So just like we did last time, I'm going to hold 3, and I'm going to click, and I'm going to choose what color I'd like the light to be when it's on, when it's glowing. And like I said in the name, it's just going to be a very simple warm yellow. So let's pull that up. I think I like that. That's quite nice. Now if I plug that into the base color, it just makes a very yellow texture. So let me quickly apply that and show you what I mean. So if I go into my light and I click on the light and change that to my yellow glow, now it has turned it yellow, but it still doesn't really look like a light, which isn't helpful. So I'm going to go back to my material here, which you can access in the tabs at the top, and I'm going to do something a little bit different with it. I'm going to hold the M key, M for mic, and I'm going to click here, and that's basically just a multiply node. I'm going to plug my color into the A pin of the multiply. Now I need an extra node to plug into this one here. So if you hold the 1 key this time and click, it gives us a single vector instead. Again, you could right click and type in 1 and find it in that list somewhere, but holding the 1 key and clicking is much easier. Now I'm going to plug this in here, instead of plugging this into the base color, I'm actually going to plug it into this emissive color pin here. Plug it in, and nothing actually happens yet. And that's because this 0 is still 0. Now when you click on this, you should see in the left hand side the details underneath here, and the details of materials are slightly different to the details in your actual blueprints. They're actually on the left side here, but you can see the value is still 0. Now I'd like to think of this value in this instance to be how much the light is glowing. So if I change this from 0 to 25, suddenly it turns the light on, it turns the glow on. Now the higher this number goes, the brighter this glow is going to look. So I'm going to turn it up to 50. It's glowing more. Let's have a bigger change so we can see it. 150. Brighter again. 1,000. Very bright. Something silly like 10,000. So bright it's now brighter than we can actually see. So I'll scroll out. Very bright. So I think an appropriate amount here, let's just set it to 100. And then that's now glowing. Now the good thing about this is, now that I've saved this texture, this material, sorry, any object in the world that is now using this material, it will update every single one of those objects. I haven't got to go back through, I haven't got to change each material to my updated one. They'll automatically update. So I'm going to close down that, and you can see instantly my light is now updated, which is perfect. So let's put this in the world. I'm going to compile and save that. If you haven't already, you can try this as well. Add the texture to your, the material to your object, compile, save it, and let's drag this into our world. So I'm going to pull it here, and that's it. That's it there. Now the glow on that is actually a little bit brighter than I was expecting. So let's put this into practice. Let's go back to my material, and let's open it up. And I'm going to turn this glow down to 50. Save it. Let's have a look. And that is actually a little bit lighter. So let's actually make this window a little bit smaller so we can see this in real time. Let's go down and change it to 25. And you can see that got a little bit dimmer there. Just to show that this does work in real time, I'm going to turn it off completely and have a look how it changes. There you go, so now it's completely off. It's up to you how bright you want to make your light. I'm not entirely sure how bright I'd like mine, so I think I'm going to go with 25 because it's not too overpowering when you look towards it. Now, depending on what color light that you have gone for, will depend on how high you'll need to put this value. Colors like red need a little bit of a higher value there to try and push through that glowing property. So keep that in mind when you're actually making your material. I'm going to stick with 25. So my light's here, I'm going to rotate it around, and I'm actually going to just place it on the ceiling. So let's go in. And there you go. I don't think that's very central. But that'll do. How central? That's not too bad. Now, you can see from outside, this isn't actually casting any light whatsoever to this room. If you look at it, it looks like it's glowing. That's a little bit of a bug from the editor when you're actually running the game. So look, it won't look like that. There you go. So it's just something glowing on the top. It's not actually adding any light to our environment. We're going to add that light manually to our blueprint. So once you've got your light in position, go back to your blueprint. Simple like that. Once you open this back up, you'll probably end up in this event graph. Don't worry about this just now. We're not going to code anything on this light, so we can just, in the tabs at the top here, click back on the viewport and you'll go back to your actual light here. Now the next thing we're going to add is the light itself. That's going to be added to our scene. So click on add components, and we're going to look for a point light. Again, it's in this common list here at the very top, a point light. So click on that, and it's going to add a light into the very base of our light here. So I'm going to actually pull this up. There we go. I'm going to pull it to about there. Now I can't see anything here because I'm in this editor. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make it a bit smaller, and you can already see in real time that light is now casting real light into this room. It's even creating a bit of a, there you go, some light coming out there. If we had anything up here, you'd probably see a little bit of light coming, but you see the shadows being generated. It looks brilliant, awesome. I don't actually think I need to do much to this. I think that looks quite nice. However, for the sake of it, I'm going to change it a little bit. So let's have a look. Using the detail section, while clicked on your light, you can change the color of your light in the exact same way. So technically this is a yellow light, so I'll make my color a little bit more yellow. There you go, that looks nice. So if I make that smaller, you can see that that is a little bit more yellow. I'll quickly change it to something drastically different. There you go, so it can be red, it can be whatever color you'd like. I'm not going to change these, but you can change things like the intensity to make the light far more intense or less intense, depending on what you wanted. Ooh, just click with that. The attenuation radius, the source radius, all of these things you can change and modify to make your light act in the way that you really want it to act in. But for now, I'm going to compile and save that. I'm happy with that. So now you can see that light is being cast inside this building. So if, let's try it again, the sun does go down and things do get dark, doesn't matter. You can still see inside here is lit up and illuminated with all the shadows automatically being generated for you. Perfect. Even if the light is to completely go and go below the horizon, the only thing you can now see is in fact the areas that are illuminated. So let's bring the sun back up a second. Because we've created that object, that light, as a blueprint, we've now allowed ourselves to quickly spawn that anywhere in our world. So let's just grab one here. Here's another light. And I'm going to change it so it'll just sit on the wall. You can see the shadows being cast behind the light because the light can't go behind it. I'm going to go a little bit closer so we can see what I'm doing. There you go. So now this light is on the wall here. And I'll put one on the other side as well. So now, if I bring the world, so the light down, instead of only seeing the inside, you can actually see that the outside is illuminated too. If I play this, you'll get a better idea of how the lighting looks. Perfect. Now before I end this video, I'd like to just show you why it's important that we've made the light like we have as a blueprint, rather than just dragging a cylinder and just popping a light on top. Why is it better for us to have done it this way? Now it's important because often when we make a little change to something like let's say a street light or a building's light, we don't just want to change it on that one individual light. We'd like the change to be made across all of them. So if we individually made a light every time we wanted a street lamp or a ceiling light, when we come to change that, or want to change, let's say, the color of these lights, we'd have to actually physically go and change each light. Now if you imagine a game like Grand Theft Auto or Saints Row or some big open world which has got potentially thousands of different street lights or street lamps or just generic lights, you'd have to go through and change every single one of those lights one by one to what you'd like it, or to what you'd like to change it to. Whereas using a blueprint, we can click on this, and I'll quickly lower the sun so we can see. We can click on this, edit our blueprint, and all of the instances of that blueprint will change at the same time, the same way that our material would. So instead of going around our game world and spending the next 4 weeks of development time changing individual lights, we're instead changing all of the lights at one time with one action, saving an inconsiderable amount of time doing so. So that's why it's important that we have a lot of our objects, a lot of our entities, our 3D models, or anything that's working as a blueprint, using them as a blueprint, so it saves us time in the future. I'm going to compile and save that. So have a play around with that. Have a play around with making a blueprint. Change your lights, change the lighting effects of the world, make your world or your objects look how you'd like them to look before moving on.